Okay, this video is going to be transferring your design onto your platter before we go ahead and implement the Sgraffito technique. A few things that you're going to need are, number one, your initial drawing. Number two, you're drawing on either a, tracing paper, a thin piece of paper, you just want an outline of it, a really crisp, clean outline. And we're going to then piece it onto your actual platter. And you're also going to want some ballpoint pens. If you have any kind of tools like this, you could go ahead and try for that. I like using a pen just because I could see what I've drawn over already and I don't have to keep lifting and kind of guess. So, going on from there, let me move this down. This is my platter and it is leather hard right now. You could see that the color of the clay is still the color of a fresh workable greenware. This is the color it starts to change as it dries out, the white clay. So you could see the difference in color between the two. This one's much darker because it has a lot more water in it. We don't want it to dry out. You guys want to make sure that you're covering it every single night. And if it is starting to dry out, just give it a little spritz before you're ready to cover it up for the day. It should be almost the consistency of one of these easy cut blocks. So if that's something easier for you to reference, kind of keep that in mind. Once I have my design, and it went that way. Once I have my design, I decided to do these jade plants. You're then gonna wanna go over them, and you want a nice thin sheet of paper. I originally did mine on a Bristol board. You wanna trace over it, and you just wanna get a crisp, clean outline. It might look a little bit funny because you don't have the shading in it, but the shading's gonna come into place once we start carving. Because my platter kind of goes up at the edges and it's not flat like my drawing was, I am gonna cut it into 3 different sections and then I'm gonna kind of map out where I'm going to place it on the curvatures. This is something really important because when you guys went ahead and traced the amount of space you had, you're not always accounting for the curves that you have. And this is also going to allow you to place it out and go with the shape of your platter exactly if your tracing was a little bit off. So I know when I did mine was slightly off. And piecing things together, I just know from getting tattoos is really common because the human body, isn't shaped perfectly. There's a lot of different curves and, indents and things like that. So I'm going to slowly go in and I'm gonna first line up my drawing to kind of see the side that I started on. So, yeah, I believe I'm that way. So I'm gonna scooch this over. And I'm gonna lay my first piece out. And you could see how it's really gonna go up into the curve of this. And I'm just gonna kind of try to stick it down the best I can. You wanna make sure that your 3 coats of underglaze are completely dry before you do this. And you might notice that, yeah, that will happen. You could even go in and tape it down a little bit. I might go in and cut a little bit of this out just so I could frame it better on my piece. So let me go ahead and cut my other ones out. And I'm not gonna trace all of these in, I'll just trace 1 or 2 of them in. But if you get a nice clean shadow cut around your creation, that's gonna make it easier to rest onto your platter. And once you get this all on, it's gonna be so much fun carving. And I'm gonna do that in the next video because I feel like it's super important to get a really accurate, whether it be drawing or tracing onto whatever your Sgraffito piece is going to be, because that's kind of what you're gonna be going off of. If you have, you know, just a super abstract tracing on there, once you get carving, it could get a little bit confusing, you know, if you don't have those details in, at least those generalized details. I wouldn't get too far into it. So then I have my other piece. I'm probably gonna trim this up because the paper space is definitely taking up a little bit. And then I have this one that's gonna go up the side through here, so you can see how I really will need to take quite a bit away in order to fit it and piece it in. And I'm just cutting out all three. I'm only gonna trace one, but I just wanna make sure that I'm lining them up appropriately so I will have enough space. And this tracing paper is like super wiggly. A computer paper would be fine too. Maybe I should have done that, but that's okay. Anything that you could really see to trace through it, that's why you wanna make your original piece fairly dark. So go over it with Sharpie, really go over it dark with pencil so that you could see through and get a really nice tracing. If you need to hold it up to a window or a light table, you could do that. I just find it easier to have a dark drawing to go over. That way I don't have to, you know, tape it up to the window and trace it that way. It comes a little bit more complicated. This also helps you break up your drawing into smaller pieces. So I'm gonna go in and actually, you know what? Maybe I like it better placed this way. And you kind of play around with it. Let's see. Let me go grab some tape really quick. I'm sorry. I got my tape. And these will curl up on you just because the paper is absorbing some of the moisture. So you will need a little bit of tape. It could be Scotch tape, it could be masking tape. Just make sure you know, do your best to try and lay out your design before you tape anything on. No, it was this right side. Let me bring that up. And I'm really gonna have to press this down and kind of bring it up. I might even need to put this in two pieces because you could see, like, as it's bending, the shapes start to change. But just for now, I'm gonna tape it in place to give myself a good marker. So setting up your piece is really, really important. If you go ahead and lay down one part, you know, like I was talking about yesterday, sometimes, you know, when I go to set up a poster and I don't measure it out, I'll get to like those last two letters and it's just not a pretty time. So we'll lay this out, get this nice and flattened. If I need to alter my design slightly, that's okay. But we're gonna try to get that in. Fold that in. And try not to get the tape on the underglaze. Try to just keep it on the edges over here. Then my next piece will come in and, you know, you could see where like the overlaps and everything are. You might have to kind of piece it in a little differently. You could almost see like the exact line where this was cut out. So I might tape that directly onto the paper. Because these are so close together now, I can do that. So taping like the one sheet to the other sheet. And I know it seems a little nutty because these were together, but otherwise you wouldn't be able to get the curvature of the entire piece that you want to attach. So I'm gonna bring this up here. And I know I said don't touch the underglaze, so I'm gonna try to go over it so that's not touching. There's a little space in between. My design really goes cohesively together. If you have pieces spread a little bit more far apart, it may be easier to map out. Also, having the Sharpie underneath it, you could see really makes a difference because even now that I have some tape down, I could still see through it. And sometimes in small pieces, when you're tracing it, it will stick down a little bit. You're gonna always wanna make sure that you really hold your paper nice and straight when you're going over it, because it does have the tendency to bend a little bit. And that's what we wanna do with this, but we don't want your tracing to be way off. So bending this up and to the edge, and then fitting my last piece in, which will be kind of over here. I might put it into, I'll bring it up. So it is almost in the same exact spot. I might bring it underneath a little bit. You can also make alterations once everything is down. I might bring some more of this plant over to the side eventually. But at least now I have all the curves in my drawing and I'll be good to go. I'm gonna just hold off on attaching this one just yet, and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna start tracing my first one. So I have it taped down. Sometimes it'll warp a little, so you wanna make sure that you really are getting the accurate tracing of it. I'm gonna just go in with a ballpoint pen, and you don't wanna press really hard when you're doing this. You just wanna go in over the design, and this is just gonna make a very small impression into the clay. This is gonna give you a really nice guide, so make sure you do a nice job on this because this is actually becoming part of your piece. If there are any small pieces, that you mess up on, we could always go in and add a little bit of underglaze into them, but I always prefer to try to avoid that. I'm gonna pull this up, and I'm gonna continue because you can't really see that much from the camera. So I'm gonna continue a small piece. And I'm pressing really lightly. The clay is in a leather hard state, so it still has the ability to move slightly, but it's in that perfect carving condition. You don't want it to dry out too much, or else you're gonna get those chalk-like crumbles, kind of on a really dry piece like this, and you don't want that. You want it to carve out on you, almost like you were carving out an easy cut or a linoleum printing block. So just tracing over. And really, really important that you guys do break these up into, exact outlines. And I'm probably gonna go in after this with pencil and add in some more of my details. So I'm gonna go up the side here. And the reason I'm going in with pencil for my details is because I'll have a general outline and then I could kind of go off of my sketch and also insert those directional lines appropriately before I go in and carve. I'm gonna carve in much more detailed than I have on my initial sketch. But that was just to give me a good idea of, you know, kind of where I was going with everything. So this comes down. And you could always like give it a little lift and check as you go. I'm gonna just show you what it looks like up close, and then I'm gonna continue the rest and I'll show you in the next video. So you could see that really light impression in there. I'm not going through to the clay, very lightly, and I'm just getting a very, 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 very light impression. That's what you wanna go for, and you're gonna want your whole piece to be like this, and you know, very slight pencil added in as well for some of your details. In the next video, I'm going to go over beginning to carve these, but this is going to be step 2. So we created our platters, we put our underglaze on them, and now we are starting to transfer our design. So step 2.